Hi, welcome to yet another episode of Be Positive on etbrandability.com. This is your host, Ambi Parameswaran. Today we have Sumit Mathur, CMO of Kellogg India. Hi, Sumit. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Ambi. It's my pleasure to be here. Really looking forward. As I was telling Prasad the other day, this is a welcome change versus all the regular corporate interviews we do. But look forward to catching up.
Great. Good. You opened. You gave me an opening. So, Be Positive is not about what great companies are doing with marketing or what are the great challenges they have. It's more about people. So we speak with CMOs across diverse set of industry to understand where they started, what education they went through, schooling, family influences, and then on to their college education. And then, of course, if they did MBA, where did they do MBA? And then did they have any mentors? And then on to their career, saying where did they start, what challenges did they face, what did they learn, and how did they progress. So, Sumit, I mean, your CV is like gold-plated, schooling, and then IIT Delhi, IIM Calcutta, undoubtedly the best business school in India, if I may say so myself.
I agree.
And then to Hindustan Unilever, and then now at CMO at Kellogg. So this story, this show is about personal growth, triumph, challenges, objections, rejections, etc. So before we get into your career, Sumit, I'd like to give the viewers a bit of background about your early schooling and early college days before you got into IIT.
Sure, Ambi. I'll give a little bit of heads up. But I must say, I went to the best business school, agree with you, and also one of the best technology schools. So
yeah, definitely one of the good ones, but may not be the best. The best one is in Chennai, Madras, so to speak. But anyway, IIT Delhi is a great institute. Yeah.
No, so coming back, so Ambi, I was I spent most of my childhood in the city of Taj, which is Agra. That's where I was born. And I spent almost till my 12th being there, and some very, very fond memories. I must say I had a very happy childhood. Ambi, I was in a typical middle class family, so all the middle class values that come with it, but also in a joint family. So we were. I remember. Almost all through my childhood, we were 10 odd people, my dad, my mom, my sister, my grandmom, my uncle, my chacha, and their kids, right? So all of us staying in a 3-bedroom or a 3 BHK, as we call it in Bombay, a 3 BHK in Agra. But yeah, it was great times, right? In terms of, learning as you grow up, how to be happy with what you have, how to be able to share with what you have, and still make the most of it. So two things, I remember from those times. Apart from, of course, lots of fond memories, and I seriously believe some of these things shape you as you grow up, right? So one slightly in jest, right? I'll tell you is that I get ready today and take a bath very, very quickly. And, versus, my wife and my daughter who, is in the bathroom for half an hour. And I wonder, why do I do that? And when I reflect, I realize that when I was a kid and we were 10 people at home, there was half an hour for 10 people to get ready in the morning. And that hasn't gone away even till now. So some of those. But seriously, on a serious note, I think, I was in a family where we were middle class, but my father was in business, a small time business in Agra, and our family's philosophy was amdani athanni kharcha rupaiya. So if you know what I mean, right?
There was a famous song as well. Remember? I think
correct. Yes.
I think Ashok Kumar was there in that song.
Yes. So, but while being in that situation, I really give a lot of what I am today to my mom. I do think that in the midst of where we were in a slightly business family, education was there, but not the most important. But my mom was the oasis in that sense. And she really, really cultivated for me the importance of discipline and education. And then, of course, things happened over a period
Great.
of time.
So, I mean, I think we have never, so it's actually wonderful to have someone who was born and brought up in Agra in our show, because there's also a pet thesis of mine that compared to the days when I was in IIT and IIM, 80-90% of the students used to come from the big cities.
Yeah.
You know, the Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, maybe Bangalore, Hyderabad. Now things have changed. And I think you're a testimony to that. And, coming out from Agra and then going to IIT. Great to see. So how did this IIT happen? Did you go to Kota or did you study in Agra only, or?
No, I studied in Agra. I did not do any of those. Of course, you get those correspondence materials, etc., that we all did. And as I was saying, right? So I remember, as a kid, I was decent in school, but not a top performer ever. And I think that's my journey, and we'll talk about it when we get to that. But I sort of finished my 12th, couldn't really crack anything great at that point of time. But then said at that time that there are two options, right? At that time, a lot of my family said, go to a college in Agra, and of course, you can come and do the family business, etc. But yeah, as I said, there was some influence of my mom at that time, right? And she said that give it a shot. And I guess that's where probably the trajectory changed, Ambi. So I spent a good 1 year. Part of it, I did some coachings in Agra, but primarily self is what I would say in terms of studying it. And then, yes, got into IIT. So I think it was a little bit more of self-study, knowing a couple of friends, asking them what did they do, what do you look at, and that's how IIT happened.
And then did you enjoy, of course, you must have enjoyed IIT, and anything to remember from the IIT days? Did you avoid, which one did you do? Metallurgy, mechanical, electronics?
No, I was a civil engineer, Ambi. I was building, my aspiration was to build bridges. Hopefully I'm able to do a little bit of bridge building with my consumers now. But yeah, that's what I started with. But I think IIT, of course, you learn a lot, no doubt, right? But I think if I honestly take back one thing from my experience at IIT Delhi is it's a great leveler. And personally for me, you feel like you are cat's whiskers, you've gotten into IIT, you're the smartest man on earth. And then when you go there and you realize, oh boy. Yeah. And I think that for me was the single biggest learning. It also taught me one more thing, to be honest. It taught me the value of resilience and attitude versus just being sheer brains or IQ. And when you are with really, really intelligent people, right? And I have no shame in telling you that I was probably the bottom in terms of IQ at IIT Delhi. But I did well over the 4 years, 5 years I was there. I had a very decent GPA. I passed out well. I was in the top 5 of my class.
That's pretty good, yeah. So you're not part of the Chetan Bhagat gang. That's 6 points.
No. No, but I must tell you, I think the point is, but I think the point is that I really learned that if you believe in yourself, you can do wonders. And I still remember one incident, Ambi, during my IIT time. It sort of demonstrates this point on resilience. I remember I did first second year, second sem, and I got jaundice at IIT, right? And I came home, and then we were wondering what to do. So my parents went with me. We met a very nice professor. I still, fondly remember him, a guy called Sumit Mathur, who used to teach in civil. And we said, "Kya kare? Should we, he's not well. Should he stay at home for a month and a half?" The professor said that, attendance is there. So you can drop him he'll have to drop a sem, right? At that point of time. And my parents said, that can't happen, right? We signed up for a 4-year course, not a 4-year 6-month course. So, but anyway, he gave a good advice that why don't you leave him here? It's not as if this hasn't happened before, right? So I stayed in campus. And of course, there was family who used to bring me food in Delhi. But more importantly, my circle of friends, Ambi, right? I still remember, I don't know whether I should say it now, but I got a lot of proxy attendance during that time. But the thing is, that was the sem where I got my best GPA. because I was worried that what will happen, right? And so therefore I did put my mind to it, and it was one of my best performing semesters. Of course, my friends still pull my leg, saying, you got that GPA on our back. But I guess just the point is that that thing has stuck with me, and I still remember it because it told me that if situations are tough, but you have the resilience, then more often than not, you can navigate it. I think that's
I think you had a 4-year IIT experience. I had a 5-year IIT experience, and but the kind of friendship bond you form in IIT, and I'm saying IIT as a kind of a placeholder, because any hostel education, I believe that hostel education is a must for undergrads. So I think this day scholar thing, I think, is not a good thing. Stay in the hostel, you make some good friends, you make some bad friends, you pick up bad habits, you pick up smoking, drinking, whatever else you want to do. But the friends you form, the network you form, they stay with you for life. And I think Nitish Tiwari, and again, IIT Bombay grad, who was a colleague at my old agency, he captured this entire friendship thing in that wonderful movie, right? Chichore.
Yes.
How these friends are for life and they come. So amazing. So after IIT, did you work or did you take the CAT?
No, I was one of those who straight away moved. But before I go there, I think this whole point that you mentioned about the circle of friends, I actually absolutely agree. It's very interesting. I have these close 6 friends, Ambi. They're all from the same wing at IIT Delhi, right? Even in this hostel called Jwalamukhi Hostel. And till pre-COVID, every year we do a bachelor's trip and we go somewhere or the other. And we've been doing that for the last 12 years now. Once a year. So thanks to our spouses who allow us to do that as well. But yeah, we have stayed in touch, and I think those friends are for life. And they're a great sounding board. In fact, something I believe everyone should have, right? You need to have a good sounding board where there are no expectations, but great advice and great friendship. It does work.
And with those friends, there is no title, nothing. You probably called by some funny surname, name, which I will not use in the show. So everyone has a funny nickname, and you stay the same. So great. So after IIT, one last question about IIT. Did you go to that water tank top which Chetan Bhagat writes about?
No, I didn't go there. Oh, no, I didn't go there. I think Chetan Bhagat took a little bit of liberties. But hey, some of the things he did capture well, but no, I never went to the water tank.
Okay, then what? Then IIM happened?
Yeah, I think IIM almost automatically happened, Ambi, to be fairly honest. And I'll tell you an anecdote there again. But when you reflect, you think some of the things that formed you. I remember I gave Hindustan Unilever interview at that time. Hindustan Lever interview from IIT Delhi as well, right? And at that time, I had almost decided by 3rd, 4th year that I'm not gonna be a technical guy. I saw that happening, and I thought HUL is a great place, and I did decently. But the interviewee said in the end that why don't you do an MBA and then try again? At that point of time, so I took it to heart. So as luck would have it, then I did an MBA from IIM Cal and I joined Unilever, and I mentioned that in my IIM Cal interview.
So did you do summer internship at Unilever?
No. In fact, I did my summers at ITC, another great company. MBA. In fact,
I should share this with you. I've written that in my book Spring, that my journey into advertising was because I was rejected by Hindustan Lever twice. Once when I was in IIT, just like you. But there I deserved to be rejected because I muffed up a very simple question. I deserved to be rejected. The second time I got rejected was when I was interviewing with them for summer internship at IIM Cal, where I was a very good student. I was one of the top students there. And they asked me some trick question, about will you sell this watch to me or something like that, which I gave a very logical answer, and I blew that. And that's when I said, had a bit of an epiphany saying, why am I chasing this company? I should do what I want to do, etc., etc. That got me into advertising. And when later in the final placement, when Hindustan Lever came and had shortlisted me, And they said, where is this guy? They said, no, this guy has been placed. So they said, no, we are the first company. How can he be placed? They said, no, he did a summer internship and he's gone. So in my case, I dodged the Hindustan Lever bullet. But so you joined Hindustan Lever straight out of IIM Cal, right? And so in IIM Cal, tell me any courses you remember, any advice to people who are going through. A lot of MBA students also watch our show. So
yeah, I think just two advice, and one in hindsight, and you sort of hinted on that question. I do believe one should work before doing an MBA. Seriously, I didn't do it, and some of the things I learned as tricks of trade and through the experience of my initial couple of years working, I wish I had them to make a better use of my MBA time. And there were people there. I remember there used to be in IIM Cal, and in my time, a lot of people who used to be the SCRA people, if you remember, who used to join after having done a stint at railways, and similarly from other stints. And I just feel that that's something one should always do. It does.
How big was your IIM Cal batch, and how many people had work experience in that batch?
I think our IIM Cal batch was around 400 odd people, if I remember correctly, and not more than 20% were working. Everybody else was a fresher.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame, because I would feel we were lucky. We were only 100 of us in our batch, and close to 45% was people with work ex.
Yeah.
And we used to call them mama and all that because they were much older than us, but they brought a different flavor into the classroom.
Absolutely.
Because they bring their own experience and they talk about what happened, what did happen, etc. So I think, again, if someone, one of our viewers watching here, if they are in a B school, try and be friendly with the guys who come with work experience, because you learn quite a lot from them. So any courses you remember at IIM Cal which you still go back to in a sense?
Yeah, I remember I was fond. Don't ask me questions on the courses though anymore, Ambi. But I remember micro eco was something I used to really enjoy at that point of time. I also enjoyed listening to. I don't know about the subject, but also really enjoyed listening to Linchat, who was the professor there at that point of time on humanities. So yeah, those are things I really fondly go back to. Of course, I did the sales and the marketing and the strategy and the finance, all those as well. But those two courses I really do fondly remember.
Yeah, Linchat is management of self. That comes up with, we've interviewed a few people from IIM Cal, and Linchat comes quite often, as one of the courses. So it's actually amazing that someone who's graduated 20 years ago still remembers what happened in that course. It's amazing. So so why did you not go to ITC? You did summer internship at ITC. ITC is a great company. They might have actually made a pre-placement offer to you. You gave that up and went to Levers.
No, they did not give me a pre-placement offer, of course. but having said that, no, it's honest, yeah, I can't cook that up. But no, I think I'll tell you what. I believe that my love for sales and marketing started with ITC. I'd heard of it, but when I really worked, and I was in sales, and I still remember in my summers.
Which division were you assigned?
Tobacco.
Oh, ITD. Okay, yeah.
So I was based in Saharanpur.
They have a big factory there, right?
Yes. They do. And this whole area of Saharanpur, Roorkee, Dehradun, where I was, learning the tricks of trade as a sales guy. And ITC has a fabulous distribution setup. It had it at that time. It has it now. And I still remember going on a cycle with the salesman. And what is amazing at that time, it felt obvious, but I realized how difficult it is for some other companies, is that, cigarettes was, even at that time, an all cash business, Ambi. No credit, right? Which, we now, every FMCG company has to live with that. So he used to go on a cycle. He used to say, "Aapko aaj kitni wills chahiye?" He'll give it to you as the dukan to the shopkeeper, and on his way back, he collects the cash, because by that time, probably the shopkeeper has already sold it. So that was the real-time demand that business had. But anyway, learned a lot of core distribution fundamentals, the power of brands at that point of time in Saharanpur branch. And after that, I think I was fairly clear that I do want to move into sales and marketing. Not so much from the courses that I am, but certainly from my experience at ITC. And then Unilever, Hindustan Lever obviously happened because it was the first company, and it was probably one of the best sales and marketing companies to go to. And they chose me because I told them that you did not choose me in IIT. So
you told me they had made a vow to you that अभी नहीं लेंगे लेकिन MBA करेगा तो जरूर ले लेंगे.
Correct.
Okay, great. Just to digress a little bit on this ready stock operation of ITC. For viewers who don't know, most FMCG companies send a sales rep who books orders. He goes and gives the order to the redistribution stockist in the evening, and the redistribution stockist then takes the order and delivers it the next day to the retail outlet. Now, this is, in a sense, very inefficient. So, ITC cigarette distribution probably is the most efficient because the sales rep carries the cigarette, he delivers the cigarette, collects the cash. It's all done, right? And these are on set routines. So I think they call on the same outlet, once a day or once every 2 days or something like that. It's a beautiful routine. So the entire sales system, I'm told, is now, at least FMCGs are relooking at this whole thing that why should you send people twice? And, it's a colossal waste of time and effort, etc., etc. So from IMCAL, you joined Unilever, and again, you must have been posted in some remote Bareilly or wherever. Where did you go?
I was born a UP ka bhaiya, Ambi. Let me put it this way. So
you were sent back.
I was sent back. So, but to be fair, what Unilever did is, and UP rural. So Unilever had, or Hindustan Lever had a urban setup and a rural setup. So I was handling the rural part of Central and East UP. So as rural and as Hindi heartland.
East UP is terrible, yaar. You're from West UP. You're from a more sophisticated part of UP.
Yeah, correct. If there is something called sophisticated UP.
Lucknow is also very Lucknowy, right?
Of course.
Very Lucknowy. And Kanpur, again, this is, beautiful in a sense. But East UP is as close to Bihar as you can get, right? So
absolutely. But some amazing experiences. As in, I think that I really cherish some of those. You are a young Turk. You have come out of MBA. Obviously, at my time, I had no experience of leading teams. And suddenly here you are talking to, you have a team of 35, 40 people, far more experience on running these businesses than you. And how you work with them, how you lead them is a journey in itself. I still go back and I have my earliest mentors are my sales officers, MB, because I learned leadership from them. Looking at them, understanding how they work. I could bring in the Excel sheets. I could bring in a little bit of brand thinking, but the softer leadership skills is something I really picked up from them. I learned a lot of other things also. I remember too. So I had the opportunity of in my sales to do UP rural. And then also to do Delhi Metro, and they were the top end portfolio. So I did two things. And it's very interesting. In UP, I still remember this experience. And I remember I was in, I think a couple of months into my sales role, and I went to Raebareli. And my distributor there, half politician, half distributor. And he was saying, let's go. And he was going for his collections. And he had a katta or a revolver with him while he was going for his collection. And I was like, yeah, this is also a world, yeah. So as long as it wasn't pointed at me. So that was fun. And then the other spectrum of it, I remember, is because I was handling the top end portfolio in Delhi. And I remember, that was a Lakme business of Unilever. And I was a sales ASM. And I learned how to apply all nail polish shades on my hand to sell them in Sarojini Nagar. So I just reflect at the diversity of learning. But that's the magic of a company like Unilever and the magic of sales, I would say. That you get to experience the length and breadth of the country and the length and breadth in terms of what sales can be.
So you were taken from rural sales UP to to Delhi selling cosmetics to top-end Khan market.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. So this was how long? 2-3 years?
Yeah. So I did sales for around 3.5 years. First 2 years in UP, and then followed by the Delhi Metro stint.
Then what? Then you were sent to Argentina, or?
Actually, after that, I got my first brand role, and that was Ambi on Sunsilk. So I was the brand manager on Sunsilk in 2007 is when I came into that role. And Argentina was a part of that stint because there was a secondment, and we had gone there to experience. Hair was a big category in Latin America always, and I guess those were the times, and big learnings, right? I think for everyone, but the shampoo and the conditioner category in India has exploded over the last decade, right? And I was very lucky that I was in around the time of 2000 and 2009. I remember the penetration of shampoo still used to be 35-40%, and conditioners used to be negligible at that time. But look at it now, and I think a couple of things have really worked. I think the role of low unit price points in shampoos as a category has catapulted penetration. We were a couple of friends who were in the hair category, between Sunsilk, Clinic Plus, and Dove, which were the three big brands, and Clinic All Clear at that time. And I think the role of the 1 rupee and the 2 rupee sachets and how they can explode the business. I saw that happening in front of me, and it's a learning for life in terms of how but you have to get it right. I think in terms of what the price point is, what the dosage is, and most importantly, that you are able to drive incrementality and not just downgradation. I think that's critical when you do that. And I saw the business explode. I mean, last I know, shampoo penetration is now 90 plus in India, and even conditioners is exploding as well. So in the last 10 years, that category has changed. So that was my first one.
Tell me, I think you spoke about secondment to Argentina, and I also know anecdotally that the Latin American countries, the per capita consumption of shampoo is probably the highest in the world, right? They wash their hair even more often than even developed countries like US or Europe or whatever. So how was the experience of a secondment in Argentina, where the language is Spanish? They party. I mean, I remember my own Latin American colleagues. We used to meet in the global meetings, and they're ready to party till 1 o'clock every night. But next day morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they're in the meeting. So I used to wonder, what do you guys do? Yeah, I mean, and they're all nicely, women are all freshly washed hair, 7:30, 8. They're in the meeting. So I don't know what they drink. I don't know what they do. So how was it Buenos Aires? Where did you go?
Yeah, I was primarily in Buenos Aires. And you're right. I mean, I think our body structures are different. I don't think Indians can hold that much alcohol and be okay the next day. I think that's a basic body tenet. But jokes apart, you're right. I think they love to party and they love to express themselves. And hair is a brilliant way for women and men alike to express what they stand for at the end of the day. And I learned the importance of regimens, right? And in India it was just use a shampoo. Actually, we used to use soaps, right? Not a long time back. But really, the role of regimens and how if you build the regimen of pre-soak, pre-wash, shampoo, then condition, etc., etc. I think that's how a lot of these developed markets. I mean, Latin America is one. You'll see a lot of that happening in Southeast Asia also now. I think that's how a lot of this, the per capita consumption or the category building for hair products has happened across the world.
Yeah, so it's amazing, right? I mean, per capita consumption of shampoos and hair care products are probably the highest in Latin America. Similarly, look at per capita consumption of facial products.
Yes.
Beauty products is Japan and Korea, where again, a colleague of mine went to Korea and came back and said, look, an average woman applies 25 different products on her face every day. I said, kya? 25? He said, yeah. She wakes up, she applies some scrub. Yeah. Then she applies something else. Then she applies something else. The night before she goes to sleep, she applies something on her face, something under her eyes. Oh, wow. So I mean, this is consumer culture, gone on steroid or something. So that was Argentina. Then I also saw that you spent some time in Iran. That, in the current context, would be very, very interesting to know what happened. How was it?
Yeah. So actually, I have two. One, you're right. I was in Iran, but I think there's something about, and when you reflect, you realize that something which has made me curious about the entire Middle Eastern belt, which is Afghanistan and Iran. And I'll tell you two anecdotes. First, I'll talk the Iran piece, of course, because that's the question you asked. So I got a lovely chance. So when I was an ASM in Unilever, Unilever Iran was just setting up their distribution setup. And they needed some people to help them set up because they didn't have any experience. And Hindustan Unilever was the mecca of distribution. And they said, let's get them some two young ASMs Turks to come in. So there was me and there was one more good, very close friend of mine, two colleagues of us, who went there for a couple of months to help them set up their distribution structure. And therefore, we worked with the Unilever Iran team at that time. And I was placed in I was primarily in Tehran and then the ancillary, and he was placed in one more city at that time. I forget the name. But yeah, I think big learning, of course, in how that culture is and how to set up distribution. I feel very proud of. But I do remember two things, and which stood out for me, Ambi. In my life, for the first time, saw women taxi drivers in Tehran. I had never seen them in India. And it just goes to show the unconscious bias we all have, right? I had never seen them, but it is safe to that extent, right? At least at that time, it was for sure. And I was quite amazed by that. And second, I realized this, amazing roads. So the infrastructure quality that they had, and obviously they have oil and they invest and so on and so forth, but fabulous infrastructure, not just in the main city of Tehran, but even if you go outside. So I was very impressed by some of these things. And just, it's always stayed in my mind that don't make points of views just reading the news. You might get surprised later on. That stood out for me for Iran.
Or WhatsApp forwards, don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a big myth, right? I mean, all of them are burqa, etc. But burqa doesn't exist, right? I mean, they probably wear a hijab, but that's about it, right? I mean, that's about it. Hijab actually covers their hair, so it's fine. And actually amazed. So there were a lot of lady taxi drivers in Iran, in Tehran. Okay.
Yeah.
And this
because
was
not safe, right? Because it was safe for them because the capital punishments, right, at that point of time.
And this was a time, 10 years ago?
This would be 2005.
It was not as if you went there during
No.
Shah of Iran's period when he was trying to build another,
It was Islamic Republic of Iran. That's when.
Oh, great. And then I think I also saw you went to Vietnam. What did you do in Vietnam?
I've been lucky, I would say, to have experienced a lot of countries during my stint at Unilever. So, Argentina, you talked about, Iran. I was in Vietnam. I also did Ambi a role in audit. And we'll talk about it. I think it was probably my best learning experience where I was in international audits. I was just traveling across countries. So I got to visit Japan, China, large parts of Africa, a little bit of Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth for various things. But yeah, I think if I reflect on all of them, to be honest, I think the learning of how cultures are different is something that you always carry. I'll give you a couple of anecdotes. During my stint in Japan, and I was there for 2 months to audit them. As internal audit, you look at their processes. And what I realized is that, I'll call them for a meeting, right? And let's say the time of the meeting is 3, and I was there at 3. But the managing director was there 5 minutes before. So I realized I'm late if I am at 3. So you have to reach earlier. So that was a big, but they're very, very, we all hear about Japanese excellence, but I think the time they're really, really a stickler for. I think the second one I saw was in Thailand. And, again, in audit, and, audit is tough, right? It's all about conflict. You are telling people probably what you're doing is not right. And I found that, they agreed to everything I said. They said, yes. But I realized when they are saying yes, it's the fact that they want to avoid conflict. They don't want to make you feel bad. It doesn't mean they agree with you. So that's another thing I picked up picked up in Thailand. Yeah. So I think lots of very interesting cross-cultural tidbits that one picks up. Ambi. By the way, I also realized something as I traveled about Indians, myself, and about a lot of Indians is we don't listen. We love to compete. We love to talk, and I think that's a very important thing for any young marketeer. I would say in the roles they are. Of course, I mean, and I guess to some extent, it's also about the way all of us have been brought up, right? Competitive, group discussions, interviews. That's what we have seen in life. But there's a real power to listening, Ambi. And I think when you go out is where I realized that about myself. That you might want to talk, and that's critical. But the real power is if you are able to observe and listen, you'll get much more. And that's something I really picked up about us as a culture.
Yeah, I think listening is a very powerful skill. And in coaching, we are trained to develop a skill called the active listening. Active listening is getting all your senses to be focused on the person so that the person knows that you're listening to him or her rather than letting it come in through one ear and go out the other ear. So we don't listen well enough. I think it's a point very well taken. So from you did audit, and did you work on any famous brand campaigns in India when you were in Unilever? Were you behind the Brook Bond? Some very memorable campaigns you come out, or you had moved out of marketing onto something else by then?
No, I did come on to, and I think Brook Bond Red Label I remember very fondly. That was the time when there's a journey. There's a time in your life when you start. I mean, there's the initial part when you are learning a lot, but then you start contributing. And I think the tea time when I was there is when that change happened in my career. And I remember the Brook Bond Red Label time, and it was not just Red Label. I was also handling Three Roses, which is in South India, so big brand there, bigger than I guess how Red Label is in North in terms of sheer brand equity. And then a couple of mirror brands in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh on similar proposition. I think I won't take the accolades for some of the brilliant stuff on Red Label, which is the Hindu Muslim woman ad, etc. That's happened. It happened just about when I moved out of my role. But I will tell you one thing that I really picked up during that time was, and then I'll come on the learning of it as well, Ambi. I think what we were at that time in the transition, tea as a category when I came in, was trying to solve for a barrier, which is that tea is unhealthy. And a lot of work that was happening was around how tea is healthy because it has flavonoids, theanine, etc., etc., and therefore it helps mental sharpness, cholesterol, and so on and so forth. And that was good. The business was fine. But what catapulted it was going back to what tea truly does, which is brings people together.
That was a great insight. And I keep giving this example, Tata Tea did that great campaign on Jagore, that tea is not just a refresher, it actually enlivens you, it emboldens you. So, I mean, that's a great insight. Similarly, not to take away from what you guys did, the whole thing about tea is about coming together. It's again a very powerful insight. Conversations happen around tea, and I think they've managed to build it in multiple ways. So, how did the insight come? I'm sure this is not a global insight. It's your own. It's an Indian insight.
Yeah. We always knew that, Ambi, and I think that's my biggest learning. That a good marketeer needs to be a brand historian. If you go back in the history of Red Label, you will realize we have done that in the past and we have worked. It's just that marketeers get bored with things and try something stupid to screw the brand. And that's something I've always followed since then. And I learned it from one of my mentors, Sudhir, who I've worked with, Sudhir Sitapati.
Who's in ITC now? Yeah.
Who's with GCPL now? GCPL. Sudhir Sitapati.
Oh, Sudhir. Oh, yeah, Sitapati. Sorry, he's in. He just left to join. Yeah,
he just left.
Yeah. He also wrote a fabulous book, CEO Factory. Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
So I think the one thing I picked up at that time, which is when you get into a brand, the first thing you need to do is to go back and look at the history of where were the tipping points up or down and really understand what made them happen, right? And therefore, a good marketeer is always somebody who knows his or her history of the brand very, very well. And I think that is the reason why we went back on Red Label. And as they say again, no pun intended, but the rest is history in terms of how the business is.
No, but fabulous. I appreciate that you pointed out that it is Sudhir Sitapati, and I know he's made a couple of nice presentations on brand history of some Unilever brand. So he's probably a historian at heart.
Yeah.
And we used to have this tool which we used to call advertising archaeology.
Yeah.
Where you actually pull out, when you get a brand, you need to pull out all the old advertising and see if you can learn something from there. And what you're saying is right, that brand marketers have to be historians, or as well as look at the past and look at the future. The problem with today's brand managers, they're impatient. They want to change the campaign every 6 months and change the agency every 2 years.
Oh yeah. But I must tell you, I think I have a very, there's something I've learned, and it is work. It's database, not just my whim. I have seen the best performance of advertising, good quality advertising, in the second year versus the first year, because memory structures build, right? And I've seen that when I worked on Sunsilk, I've seen that when I worked on Red Label, I've seen that when I worked in Kellogg's. So hopefully 3 data points are good, where we made an advertising, it worked okay in year 1, but it exploded the brand equity and therefore the performance, because it built. See, now there are 2 ways to do it. Either you have so much money like the startups of today that you build reach in 1 month, right? But most FMCGs don't work that way. They work on continuity. And therefore, you have to give your advertising time in the current clutter so that people remember it, and then then you see a lot of it working. So consistency is a very, very important virtue to have with advertising. Don't get sucked into trying to do new things every couple of months. I am absolutely against it.
I do this talk on branding where I talk about the 4 problems with branding today. One is, of course, consumers are becoming more educated, more knowledgeable. Brand families are becoming very, very complex, multiple brand extensions. And of course, media is getting very fragmented, and that's a problem. And I say there is a 4th problem, which is the biggest problem, is the brand manager. So I gave a talk, and I don't know, I think it was Prasad or someone who wrote in a business journal that biggest threat to brand management comes from brand managers.
Fair enough.
So how did Unilever happen? How did Kellogg happen? You spent 14, 15 years in Unilever, and then you moved to Kellogg. So any memories of mentors you had at Unilever whom you want to kind of acknowledge here? You spoke about Sitapati. Anyone else?
So I did my 14 saal Ramchandji ka banwas at, as I call it, in Ambi in Unilever. But I had a lot of fun. I think it is Mecca of marketing and sales, and I learned a lot about everything. And I think there are many people, to be honest, who I look up to. And I think more than one, I can mention 3, 4 for some of the things I've always picked up from them. Right? I already talked about Sudhir too, and I think he's a historian and a big idea man. Right? I think that's something I've always noticed about him. I really look up to Nitin for his discipline, Nitin Parameswaran, and I think when he gets out, the tenacity and the discipline of going after one thing, and I think that's something in leadership I really, really picked up about him. I also remember fondly a long time back. I don't know whether you had the chance to meet him, Arun Adhikari, who was.
I know him well. I know him well. His wife also used to be a copywriter for a period with us.
Yeah. So he headed Hindustan Unilever for some time. He was in laundry, and I love him for his humility. And that's a virtue that I personally believe is very, very important for leaders as well. So you
Arun is also I am Cal, by the way.
Yeah. You're right. So I remember Arun, and last, of course, I remember Mohit Anand, who was with me in Unilever. And one of the reasons why I moved to Kellogg's as well, to be fairly honest, he got me here. But yeah, I remember Mohit because, I again, one of the guys who is cutting edge on EQ, Ambi, right? So knowing everybody by name and really knowing what makes people tick. I think that becomes a very, very critical ability as a leader, apart from just your braininess and your IQ. And I think that's what Mohit stands for. But one thing, all of them stand for, actually two, I would say, which is something I try and foster in myself as much as I can do. One is courage to take decisions. I think that's a basic tenet on leadership, young marketeers to think that, do you have the courage to decide and take decisions and take big, bold steps? And the second is self-awareness, knowing what you are good at and what you are now not, and therefore you build your right moats and your right bridges to support you on them. I think these two have found across all these four people I mentioned as mentors I look up to.
No, great. I think I don't know Mohit Anand. Hopefully, I'll get to meet him someday. But Nitin is an old friend. So is Sudhir. The other interesting thing, I've always wondered, when I'm just digressing, but it's an interesting little episode. I used to work on a brand called Bajaj Almond Drops, and Dove launched this hair oil, right? Called Dove Serum. I remember.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous packaging, and it had a petal inside the bottle, and I was blown. And in fact, I messaged Nitin saying, "Yeah, this is fabulous. This looks great, and all the best." And we are going to compete with it. But I don't know why it didn't take off, and they withdrew the product within a year of launch, which helped Bajaj Almond Drops. But I think I don't know why they gave up. Maybe there was a global diktat saying don't get into hair oil, you don't know the category, blah blah blah. Something like that must have happened. So I was a little surprised that like you say, that tenacity hai, but how did they give up? It's a little too early. So let me come to the last bit of your you wanted to speak about something about the way consumer is changing, the digitization, the analytics, how that is changing. Even we know all that is changing definitely for all the online merchants, the e-com merchants, the tech apps, the education apps, and we've had people from both e-com, from places like Baiju and all coming and talking to us. But I think it'd be interesting to get your perspective on how digital marketing, analytics are all changing in the, are affecting classical FMCG marketing. Yeah. It'll be good to tell us something about that.
I think it's an area that I'm really, really passionate about, Ambi. And a lot of work that we have been doing at Kellogg's in the last couple of years since I've been there. One, of course, was the core category piece that I talked about overall to build category development. But the second is what I would like to call the pivot to digital, right? And basically in two spectrums. There is one part of it which is, how to deliver, the traditional reach in this new environment, right? We are all very comfortable with television reach. Then YouTube happened, and now Amazon and Amazon DSPs have happened, right? So how do you look at them together is something one really, really needs to think about. And I think, given there are no, and this is something I keep having a conversation with Mindshare or who's our agency partner and my media head as well, is on how do you look at the real reach you are delivering, because you don't know that, right? And I think the rudimentary ways in which we have done it is there is some random duplication that we do to say so many common people, etc. But where we have reached as Kellogg's is to say choose your mediums and then keep driving sufficiency on each medium, and what does sufficiency on that medium look like, right? I think at a very simple level versus trying to make it very complicated for yourself. So that's the part on reach. The second part is this whole area of how do you drive engagement and typical funnel, right? Awareness to consideration to conversion. How do you drive consideration for your portfolio? And a lot of work that we have been doing is really building what I call ownable properties on digital, right? That's critical. So we have something called Amazing Creations, which is nothing but tasty, nutritious, and convenient recipes from Kellogg's. But how do you build them consistently over a period? I think that's very, very critical to do, along with figuring reach. And the third piece, of course, is how do you drive conversions at the bottom? So the search, the ACOSs of the world, and so on and so forth. But this is all fine. I think everybody will talk about it, Ambi. I think because of the forum, I guess the biggest opportunity I see for marketeers, I don't think there's a digital marketeer or a digital manager or a brand manager that will be separate in the future. They have to be one. The challenge, Ambi, is that I find that there are either people who are digitally very savvy, or I find people who are good strategic thinkers. It is very difficult to find a combination of them. And that's a massive, massive opportunity that lies, whether it is on the client side or on the agency.
So it's an interesting point you raised, and we discussed it with one of our previous guests, I think it was Dipali, where we spoke about the yin and yang of marketing today. There is this digital marketer who understands performance marketing. Right?
Yeah.
He knows clicks, he knows this, he knows that. And there is a brand marketer who knows image, top of the funnel, etc. These two don't seem to be talking to each other, right? And I use this term, spray and pray. So you put some money on TV, some on YouTube, some on Facebook, some on here, and you hope and pray it all works.
Yeah.
In the good old days, I mean, when I started my career in advertising, we didn't have TV. It was cinema.
Yeah.
It was cinema, and you take so many percentage of cinema theaters, and I had a formula. I used what is called a Querel formula to work out reach and OTS, and we used to figure out what is the reach and what is the OTS. So this is the target audience, and you need to get 30% reach and 4 OTS, and only then it will work. Then later with TV came, it became easy.
Yeah.
Now what do you do with digital? Do you have a similar measure that, I remember at one time we had 80 TRPs per week is a minimum requirement, right? And then when you do 80 TRPs a week for 6 weeks, and that's a campaign. And then you figure out how to buy it at the best price. So what do you do today? Do you do the same thing, or are you doing थोड़ा टीवी में डालते हैं, थोड़ा यूट्यूब में डालते हैं, थोड़ा इधर डालते हैं, फिर देखते हैं क्या होता है,
No, from what I have learned, and this is something which we can have an entire episode on, to be honest.
Yeah, I know.
My back of the envelope, or my experience on what I have seen till now and having looked at is identify from your target audience, and you can take whatever cut of your TG, whether it is psychographic or demographic or something else. But then know what are your mediums to drive reach and affinity, and order them and keep delivering sufficiency on one and then the sufficiency on the next, and then versus trying to spread yourself too thin.
Explain sufficiency.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I mean by sufficiency. So let's say on the female on let's take the example of Kellogg's, right? And let's take the example of I have an advertising thought, which is what I would like to call morning fuel for daily triumph, which has a television advertising, right? There is a certain, or rather than television, AV advertising, right? Now I have, based on the entire, typical volume to trial to awareness to consideration funnel, I have identified what is the kind of reach I need to deliver, right? Now, when I have identified that reach, I know my cost optimization curves for television, which tell me that till this reach I can deliver without the cost going up beyond the point of time. And that's what I look at for television. Then I do the same thing for, let's say, the second biggest medium, which is YouTube, for example. Again, you will draw the same curve and then deliver sufficiency for that. But it's a very important thing to remember what I'm not trying to do, and I've tried that and I've failed, is to make an assumption कि इससे 10 reach आएगी, इससे 2 आएगी, मिला के 11 हो जाएगी. You don't know that. You don't know that, right? You say, is 60% audience on YouTube sufficient for me? Right? You say, is 40% audience on TV sufficient for me? And then keep delivering. As you become bigger, you have more money, you can go to more mediums. I think that's the journey I have tried to follow, which has broadly worked for us at Kellogg. But we obviously keep iterating.
Yeah, and also probably, just a caution to viewers is Kellogg operates at the top probably 20% of households, whereas the same rule may not apply to the next 20%. So I think it's a great point that you made, that there is each medium, look at what is sufficient to create an impact. And only after you hit that sufficiency, go to the next medium. Don't be too much of a hurry to do something on Insta, something on Facebook, something on YouTube, something on Google, something on this, and then you do this spraying and praying. So great, yeah, thank you. So let me come to the last part of our conversation, which is we've got a lot of aspiring CMOs watching this conversation. So some advice you want to give to youngsters who are starting out on their career in marketing, or someone who's a young brand manager or a young product manager, some advice you want to give them?
One philosophy that I always keep for myself, and I think it's really, really important for every marketeer, is to keep learning and unlearning and upskilling yourself. And that is what is going to keep you relevant. I think the speed of change has become even faster over the time when I started my career to now. And therefore, honestly, it's my own personal number one challenge to stay relevant, be aware, and upskill, unlearn, and keep learning. And I think for the young guys who are starting now, guys and girls, it will be even more critical. So that is the only advice I'll give. Everything else can happen, but don't get complacent that I know enough. You never know enough.
Yeah. So I have this famous thing, right? What education does is to teach you how to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So you think when you pass out of an MBA school, you've learned everything. Sorry, your learning is just starting.
Absolutely.
MBA school actually prepares you to be a sponge, puts a lot of holes in you so that you go out and you keep learning, right? So great. Yeah. So let me come to some general interest fun questions. So like you said, you've traveled all over the world. And so I'd definitely like to know, which is your favorite city and why?
Honestly, it is Bombay because my family is here.
No, Bombay is not accepted as an answer. Yeah. No.
No, but I'll tell you two cities that I've really liked for very different reasons. One, I have really liked Rome when I got a chance to visit, purely because of the amount of history and culture that place has. And I really enjoyed it. And I like relatively warmer European climates versus colder ones. So that is another reason that I love. And the other city or country or whatever you want to call it, that I find they've done a brilliant job is Singapore. I find the way they run the country and the way it is it's always been an example on how you can set up and structure and run things. I think those two I really, really think are pretty good.
Okay, so now come to books, OTT series, music. Knowing that you're a history buff, probably you prefer historical OTTs. I don't know. I'm just asking.
So I do read. So two books I really like. One, and no surprises, is *Sapiens*. Again, because it sort of navigates history in probably one of the most interesting ways I have read. I also read a little bit of Stephen Hawking. Those are the couple of areas I enjoy. OTT, actually, I would probably disappoint you because I won't say history, but I like a lot of slightly wilder stuff in terms of, I don't know whether you've seen these programs called Dexter or Ozark, which are more into a little darker in their ways.
I gave up on Dexter after 2 episodes. Yeah.
So maybe there's something dark. So I don't know.
I'm scared to watch Dark Mirror also. So
So those I enjoy. And I cannot sing for my life, so I stay away. The only music I like is my daughter learns classical singing, so I really enjoy listening to her.
Hindustani, is it?
Hindustani classical, yes.
Oh, lovely. In fact, one of our previous guests told us how MS Subbalakshmi was his neighbor, and he used to go and talk to her. So it was, again, great. So with that, Sumit, we've gone way past the time we had asked from you. So thank you very much for joining us on behalf of etbrandify.com and Be Positive Show. Thank you very much for joining. And let me thank all the viewers for joining us. This is Ambi Parameswaran signing off. And Sumit, once again, thank you very much.